Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she seen what she had done, she gave her father 41. Hi guys, Craig here and welcome back to my channel. So today's case is going to be about Lizzie Borden. Lizzie Borden was an American woman tried and acquitted for the axe murder of her father and stepmother. So if you like the sound of this video, please give it a big thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Lizzie Borden was born on July 19th, 1860 in Fall River, Massachusetts. She was the younger daughter of Sarah and Andrew Borden. Her father was of English and Welsh descent, and he grew up in a pretty modest household and struggled for money when he was a younger man, despite being related to one of the wealthiest families in Fall River. But Andrew Borden would later prosper in life. He would do well in the manufacturing of furniture and caskets, and he would also become a successful property developer. He owned several textile mills and owned several commercial properties around Fall River. It was estimated at his death that he was worth £300,000, nearly $9 million in today's money. But despite Andrew's wealth, he was a relatively frugal man. So for instance, the Borden household had no indoor plumbing, yet this was seen as a really common luxury for the wealthy at this time. So Andrew and his family lived in a nice area of Fall River, but Andrew's cousins and other wealthy family members lived in a more desirable area known as the Hill. Lizzie Borden and her sister Emma received a relatively religious upbringing, and they both attended church regularly. As a young woman, Lizzie was really active in her local church, as she used to take Sunday school meetings for local immigrant children. She was also a member of the First Ladies Fruit and Flower Mission. So 3 years after the death of his wife Sarah, Andrew Borden married Abby Gray. Lizzie stated that she would only refer to her mother as Mrs. Borden, and it's widely believed that the pair didn't get on in the slightest. Both Lizzie and Emma thought that Abby had only married their father due to his ever-growing wealth. Bridget Sutherland, who was the Bordens' 25-year-old live-in housekeeper, would later testify that both Lizzie and Emma hated their stepmother and rarely ate any meals with their other family members. In May 1892, Andrew would kill multiple pigeons that were roosting in his barn. He'd done this because he didn't like the attention they were getting from local children. So Lizzie had just recently made a roost for these pigeons and was extremely upset with her father for killing them. This caused a real rift in the family. So a family argument broke out in July 1892, prompting both sisters to take extended vacations to the New Bedford area. After returning to Fall River, nearly a week before the murders, Lizzie Borden decided to stay in a boarding house for 4 days before returning to her family home. Tensions in the Borden household were running a little bit high, especially because Andrew had recently been giving gifts of real estate and property to Abby's family members. After Andrew gifted their stepmother's sister a house, both Emma and Lizzie demanded that Andrew give them a rental property of their own. So they purchased a property from their father for $1 and later sold it back to him for $5,000. So the night before the murder, a Mr. John Morse, the brother of Lizzie and Emma's deceased mother, decided to visit the house, and he was invited to stay for a few days to discuss some business matters with Andrew. Some people believe that he was there to discuss the transfer of some property to him, but tensions soon ran high when the pair discussed this. So weirdly, several days before the murder, the entire Borden household fell severely ill. A family friend later speculated that she thinks it was down to some mutton that was served for dinner. But Abby Borden actually feared that her husband Andrew had been poisoned due to him being very unpopular in the community. So on the morning of the 4th of August, both John and Andrew both went into the sitting room to have a business meeting to discuss some property. They were in there for nearly an hour, and at 8:48, John left. He was going into town to buy some oxen and visit his niece while he was in Fall River, but he intended to return to the Borden household at noon for some lunch. Shortly after this, around 9 a.m, Andrew left for his morning walk. So although cleaning the guest bedrooms was normally a chore for both Emma and Lizzie, Abby decided to go upstairs just to make the beds, sometime between 9 a.m. and 10:30. So according to a forensic investigation, Abby Borden was facing her killer at the time of the attack. She was first struck on the side of the head with a hatchet, which lacerated her just above her ear, causing her to fall face down on the floor. The killer then went on to strike her multiple times, delivering 17 more blows to the back of Abby's head, thus killing her. So when Andrew Borden returned that day and tried to open the front door, his key would not work. It seemed to just get jammed in the lock, so he knocked for attention. Bridget, the housekeeper, went to open the door, but she found that it was jammed. Bridget would later testify it was at this point when she heard Lizzie Borden laughing. She did not see Lizzie, but she would claim that the laughing came from the top of the stairs. This was considered significant at the time, as Abby was already dead by this point, and her body would have been visible from anyone on the second floor. Lizzie would go on to deny that she was upstairs, and would later say that her father asked her where Abby was, to which she stated Abby received a message to go and visit an ill friend. Lizzie then stated that she went on to remove her father's boots and put his slippers on for him as he lay down for a nap. But this was very strange, as photos taken of the crime scene at the time depicted Andrew Borden wearing his outside boots. She then informed Bridget, the housekeeper, of a department store sale and instructed her to go and check it out. But Bridget at this point was feeling really unwell, maybe due to the mutton that she had eaten, and decided to go for a lie down instead. Bridget would later testify that she was on the 3rd floor having a nap in her bedroom, when just before 11:10 a.m, she heard Lizzie Borden frantically scream, "Help, help, Maggie, someone's killed my father." Andrew was downstairs, slumped on the couch, where he had been hit 10 or 11 times in the head with a hatchet. One of his eyeballs was split completely in two, thus indicating that he must have been asleep at the time of the attack. His still bleeding wounds also suggested that the attack had happened fairly recently. Dr. Bowen, the family's physician, arrived from his home that was just across the road, and he announced that Andrew Borden was indeed dead. Detectives estimated that the time of Andrew Borden's death was somewhere around 11 a.m. So as the police questioned Lizzie Borden, they found that her answers and her demeanour were at times strange and a little bit contradictory. Initially, she reported hearing scrapes and a groaning noise and distress calls before entering the house. 2 hours later then, she told the police she heard nothing before entering the house and didn't know that anything was wrong. When Lizzie was asked where her stepmother Abby was, she once again recounted the story about the note that Abby had received about a sick friend. But then just 1 hour later, she changed her story again and says that she thinks Abby has come home and could someone please go upstairs to look for her. Bridget, the housekeeper, and a next door neighbour called Mrs. Churchill both proceeded to the 2nd floor, and when they looked into the guest bedroom, they seen Abby Borden lying face down. Most of the police officers that interviewed Lizzie Borden all commented on how much they disliked her attitude. Some says that she was too calm and too poised, while others would state that she was a bit frantic and confused. Despite her attitude and constant changing of stories, the police didn't check Lizzie Borden for any bloodstains. The police did search the Borden household, but later at the trial, they would admit to not doing this properly due to Lizzie constantly saying that she felt ill. The police was criticised highly for their lack of diligence. In the basement, the police found 2 hatchets, 2 axes, and a hatchet head with a broken handle. The hatchet head with a broken handle was suspected to be the murder weapon, because the break in the handle seemed to be fresh, and the ash and dust on the hatchet, unlike the other weapons, had looked like it had been placed there on purpose to make people believe that the hatchet had been there longer than it had. However, none of these items were ever removed at this time from the Borden household. Because of the mysterious illness that had stricken the Borden family, Andrew and Abby's stomachs were removed during an autopsy performed in the Borden's dining room, but no traces of poison were found. Some residents of Fall River suspected Lizzie Borden of buying a diluted form of hydrochloric acid from the local drugstore. She would defend this at the trial, saying that she bought the acid to try and clean her furs. But a local medical examiner would later testify, saying that that acid didn't have any antiseptic properties. So Lizzie's friend Alice Russell decided to stay with Lizzie the night after the murders, and police were also stationed at the Borden household. And on August the 4th, one police officer noted that he seen both Lizzie Borden and Alice Russell enter the cellar, carrying a lamp and a slop pail. He says 20 minutes later, he seen both women leaving the cellar, and 5 minutes after this, he seen Lizzie Borden enter the cellar again, this time alone. Although he couldn't clearly see what Lizzie was doing, he did state that she was bent over the kitchen sink. On August 6th, police done a more in-depth search of the Borden's house. They confiscated Lizzie's clothes and the hatchet with the broken handle. So later that evening, police officers and the mayor of Fall River visited Lizzie Borden at her house to inform her that she was now the lead suspect for the murders. The next morning, Alice Russell would enter the kitchen in the Borden household, and she would see Lizzie Borden trying to burn a dress. She claimed that she was trying to burn the dress because she spilt paint on it. It was never deemed if this was the dress that Lizzie wore on the night of the murders or not. So Lizzie's trial took place in New Bedford on June 5th, 1893. But 5 days before the trial was due to start, another axe murder occurred in Fall River. The similarities between this and the Borden case were very similar. However, a Portuguese immigrant was later convicted of that murder, and he was deemed to not have been in the area on the day of the Borden murders. A prominent point of discussion at the trial was the hatchet head found in the basement. The prosecution could not definitely say that this was the murder weapon. Prosecutors tried to argue that the murderer must have moved the handle because it would be covered in blood. One officer would go on to testify that the hatchet was found near the broken head, but another police officer would testify something else that would totally contradict this. So because of this, they could not say for 100% fact that the hatchet was the murder weapon. Although no bloody clothing was ever found at the scene, Alice Russell would testify about the day that she'd seen Lizzie Borden burning the dress. It was also stated that Lizzie Borden's whereabouts in the house at the time of the murder was confusing. According to a testimony by the housekeeper Bridget, she entered the second floor at the home around 10:58 a.m, thus leaving Lizzie and her father downstairs. But Lizzie told several people at this time that she went into the barn and was out of the house for 20 minutes to half an hour. But then, at 11:10 a.m, Lizzie called Bridget downstairs and told her that Andrew had been murdered and to go and get help. So something just doesn't add up here. Both of the victims' heads were removed during the autopsy, and the skulls were admitted in court as evidence. Upon seeing the skulls, Lizzie fainted. So the jury was set to deliberate on June the 20th, 1893. After just an hour and a half, they returned and they acquitted Lizzie Borden of the murders. Upon exiting the court, Lizzie Borden said to reporters that she is the happiest woman on the planet. Although acquitted by the court, Lizzie Borden is still the prime suspect in her father and stepmother's murders. Another significant suspect is John Morse, Lizzie Borden's uncle, who rarely visited the family after his sister's death, but had slept in the Borden house the night before the murders. According to law enforcement, John had provided a very over-detailed alibi for the time of Abby Borden's death. He was considered a suspect for quite a while. Other potential suspects would be Bridget the maid. The only motive she would have was being forced to work and clean windows on a day when she was ill. Although Emma Borden, Lizzie's sister, had an alibi for the time of both murders, some people do suspect that Emma secretly returned to the Borden household and killed her parents, and then returned to Fairhaven to wait for the information about her parents' murder. So after the trial, Both Borden sisters moved to a lavish house on the hill in Fall River. At the new house, which Lizzie Borden dubbed Maplecroft, they had a lot of live-in staff, including maids and housekeepers. Because Abby was ruled to have died before Andrew, her estate would first go to Andrew and then to his daughters, Lizzie and Emma. Despite the acquittal in court, Lizzie Borden was ostracised by the community in Fall River. Her name was once again brought to the public eye when in 1897 she was accused of shoplifting. Then in 1905 the Borden sisters would have an almighty fallout and Emma would move out of Maplecroft and she would never see her sister Lizzie again. Lizzie Borden died of pneumonia on June 1st, 1927, and it says that her funeral was attended by very few people. Okay guys, so that was the story of Lizzie Borden. Write in the comments below if you think she'd done it or not. And if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. And I will see you all next time. Bye!